All right, we are live. Welcome, Christopher Hardy.
Thank you, my friend.
How have you been?
I've been great.
Yeah, you look great. Everything's
Thank you. Thank you.
on the up and up.
Everything's on the up and up. Still traveling probably a lot more than I should, and not training as much as I should, but a little more work-life balance overall, and that I'm spending a lot more time with the family, which is good. And looking forward to September. Had a really good one-on-one with Ryan Pape last week, last Friday. Um, and let him know that as of September, I want to start training full time and go back to competing because the Pan Ams and the Worlds are coming up in November and December. And he was fully aligned, and it's great news.
Awesome. That's really, I mean, I always admired your discipline and dedication to your jujitsu and, cause it's obviously something that you have to do consistently over a long period of time. And, there's no cheating that, I think, some people obviously learn quicker than others, but in general, it's decade plus process, right?
Yeah, for me, it's been 15 years of very consistent training. The last year or so has definitely been less than normal by quite a bit. Um, and I knew that. Like, I knew and had spoken to my wife about the idea that when we relocated to San Antonio, I really wanted to, dive into work a lot more than I had before. Now that especially I'm at headquarters and have the ability to walk into, Tony's office or Ryan's office or Barry's office at any given moment in time and break down some concepts and some ideas and bounce them back and forth. And to be that instrumental or have that ability to be that instrumental maybe is more appropriate. Needed me to be as dedicated to work, if not more so than anything else. And I have a very supportive wife, as you know, so it's all good. But fact of the matter is, I really miss jujitsu. Like, really miss jujitsu. I need that outlet too. I mean, it's hour and a half to 2 hours a day where you're on the mats. The only thing you're thinking about is the next person that you're fighting against and how's that going to go. And it's my stress release to say the least.
Yeah, everybody needs something, and that certainly a good one.
Yeah.
Healthy outlet.
Healthy outlet. Now, what about you? There's been some changes since we were last on here.
Yes, yeah, I have a son, so gave birth. My
Yeah.
wife gave birth, which has been great. He's almost 9 weeks old, and that's definitely been, an experience. As anybody who's had a child, I'm sure knows, there's no like preparing in a way. Like, I mean, you think you prepare, but ultimately, nothing anybody said, I think, quite nails when you're actually in the moment and that whole experience. Like, it's something that, you have to experience more than just words. And been very blessed and thankful that everything's gone smoothly. And it's been a tremendous last 9 weeks and, maybe 11 months or 12 months in total. And very thankful and blessed.
I'm
Nothing
super
like,
happy for you and your wife, as you know. And
thank you.
I started quite late, as I think you're already aware, right? I was 48 when we had our first child, and most of my friends were probably having kids 20 years earlier, and they were all like, "Oh, you have no idea what you're missing, and it's the greatest thing ever." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, whatever." And then, my wife decided on behalf of both of us that we were going to have at least a child, and then ended up convincing me we're having a second one. But like you said, there is no chance in the world that you can even get close to comprehending the love you have the millisecond that child is born in. It is something so surreal. It's impossible again to verbalize that effectively. And I asked you if you went through the same thing, and of course you said you did. So I'm kind of like, now I'm in that father phase, or I'm kind of like looking forward to having somebody else agree with me that it is that magnanimous and that it makes that much of a difference in their life.
Yeah, for sure. And I also look back and it's added a tremendous level of respect I have for everybody who has children themselves because it's if you don't have children, it's a lot easier than with children, like doing anything else. So like if you have children and you're successfully running the rest of your life, I have tremendous respect because it's a lot of work, like, it's a lot of additional time, work, thoughts, the whole thing versus not, because I waited till I was 40 as well. So I just look back in like my 20s and 30s and like, you know, I don't know how I would have managed with a kid back then. You never know, but anyway, it all works out as it's supposed to, I suppose.
No, I appreciate that too. Like, again, all my friends were having children at a much younger age, and they clearly weren't quite as established as they probably are now. And for that reason, I'm very happy that I waited. Now I know that I'm spoiling my kids and probably doing more than I'm supposed to in terms of spoiling them or whatever you want to call it. But I don't care. I think a lot of that results in the fact that maybe when you're younger, you actually don't have the ability to spoil them. Now, again, I look at a coworker like Bliss, and I don't know if she spoils her kid or not, but she's insanely more disciplined than I am, and I really admire that. But at the end of the day, again, I'm happy that I'm able to provide for them. Here's Billy Ellis texting me in the background saying "love you" and kill it. Here's another guy similar to myself, and he's definitely a lot younger than I am, but new kids, and you watch how much work and dedication goes into the other half of your family, being in my case, in your case, and in Billy's case, our wives, right? I mean, I do not do well with background noise. I don't do well with chaos. A lot of people in our industry are very similar in that they've got some sort of level of OCD, which is what makes it successful, but also creates these nuances. And the patience and the amount of work that my wife goes through, I could not exchange with her. I would not survive. Forget the kids. I could not survive that. So I think that it's funny when you hear the cliches like, oh, really owe a massive debt of gratitude to my wife for how much she does. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Now that I'm there, I'm like, oh, I get it. I totally get it.
Totally. Well, excited to be able to chat with you for a couple hours, and you're always very, I always kind of comment how transparent you are, and we didn't talk before this. There's no like canned questions. It's been a while, so that I've come up with questions, and I'm also obviously always interested to hear what's on your mind. So let's get rolling.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I love about your podcast is just that there's no prep whatsoever. You've never done it. And I know that a lot of other people that have attended your podcast have said the exact same thing. And I remember the very first one in the hot seat that you put me into, the very first question. And,
That was
I really enjoyed it. But I'm also a person that kind of like, am by nature, if you want to say a fighter, that's part of my personality. And I like defending my position or situations. And at the end of the day, look, all of us should be grown up enough to respect the other person's opinion, regardless of what it is, and the opposite side, right? And we talked about that a long time ago. And one of the very first things, which was like, hey, well, why are you forcing people to carry a single brand? And I'm like, I'm not. They can choose a bunch of other brands or me. And them saying, well, you shouldn't force on me the way that I should do business. And my argument there is that then you shouldn't do the same thing to me, which is try and tell me how I should do business. So that's just a small example of like where I love this platform, and that it's very real. Thankfully, unlike some other brands, I tend not to have a lot of oversight into what I can say or do. Obviously, we are publicly traded, so there is some limitations for sure. And I have a massive respect, as especially for two of those other brands, Eastman and 3M. And again, I understand why they might be more, why maybe they're more restrictive than perhaps we are, but roll with it. Whatever questions you've got in mind, I'm ready. And if I'm not, I'll gladly just pretend I wasn't here and leave the podcast.
All right, deal. All right, first one is I'm pulling up the transcript from the it's not going to be like stock heavy, because I'm not going to ask you about stocks. I feel like that's not even interesting in a way. What I want to pull away from that transcript that Ryan Pape, CEO of XPEL, mentioned was that, U.S. revenue grew, but he said, quote, "We saw a softness in the aftermarket to start the year, and this is a continuation of a trend that we saw starting in late summer," which I think we've talked about generally. And then, well, not and then. So essentially, you know, it's kind of like not a big deal in a way. It's just a little bit of a maybe less than anticipated, you know, growth, but not growth. It's just less than anticipated. And I would also imagine that, you know, to an extent, maybe the way, um, you know, the push for sales in the fourth quarter can then potentially kind of, you know, people that are smart spend their money in the fourth quarter, maybe then don't have the need to purchase in the first quarter. So it's kind of a wash that averages itself over time. My question kind of really revolves around, do you think anything that you're seeing, any softening, anything, what do you think of that in terms of a dealer and their outlook and what they should be prepared for or not prepared for and so on?
Look, fantastic question and a fantastic sort of realization. You have a number of macroeconomic situations that are happening simultaneously that are having an impact. There is no doubt that there was, for all of us, a slowdown in the first quarter of this year over the first quarter of last year. It doesn't matter the brand. And it doesn't mean that we didn't grow. We did grow, but keep in mind that I'm speaking specifically, especially with regards to North America, right? The US and Canada, which represents approximately 70% of the revenue for XPEL. You had all these individuals who were buying vehicles for over list price for quite some time, over 2 years. Some vehicles, we saw addendums that were $30,000 and $40,000 and $50,000 above MSRP. There was a vehicle in particular I remember, which was a Ford Bronco. And it wasn't a Raptor. It was more like a Sasquatch edition or something else that they called it. And I remember that the vehicle, I got an addendum photo sent to me, and the vehicle listed out at $57,000 and had a $50,000 addendum. So it was double price almost. Again, that's an extreme. I realize that most weren't as dramatic as that, but I would say that across the board, you probably saw at least a 25% price increase or addendum because there was too much demand and not enough supply. Well, while a lot of us were happy that there was obviously so many vehicles going out, and because they were paying over sticker, there was an anticipation of owning it longer term. And wow, look at how awesome this whole situation is economically and stuff like that. There was this thing in the back of my mind, and as well as a lot of our fellow competitors and of course, you know, C-suite executives, is that, well, what happens in a few years if that changes? And that's what's happened. You know, you have people that are now interested in trading back their car that have a $30,000 negative equity from the addendum portion, never mind the normal depreciation. You then make it even worse by increasing the interest rates from as low as 0 and 1% to a 7 to 12% interest rate. And then on top of that, that means that the payment is dramatically higher, insanely higher. You now try and factor in the negative equity, which the bank doesn't want to fund, right? The bank will fund, based on your credit score, a certain percentage of the MSRP of the vehicle. So let's just presume that the MSRP of the vehicle is, let's make this super easy and use a high number, 100 grand. And the bank says, you know, Chris, your credit is crap, so we're only going to give you 80. And I'm trying to trade in a car that's got $40,000 in negative equity. Well, that means that I need a $140,000 loan, not an $80,000 loan. And so I've got to come up with $60,000 down just to even be able to get into the new vehicle. That's probably not going to happen.
Right.
And certainly if it does happen, it means that other things are going to suffer, right? And you're going to not spend as much on some of these products outside of the vehicle itself in terms of necessity on purpose. Now, again, I would say that maybe XPEL is less affected than certainly some other brands, and you know, certainly some maybe lesser known brands, to say the least, or some lower volume brands, because I think that in general, you'll see that XPEL tends to attract the higher end client market, right? The luxuries and the exotics. However, XPEL is seeing a dramatic change in their business with regards to that anyways, right? We are every day recognizing more and more of that lower price vehicle, more and more of that daily driver as being the vehicle that we're activating on. And so again, it all just comes back to like, okay, super high interest rates, everybody's in negative equity. The bank will only fund so much. You only want to have so much of a payment. And so the payment is not aligned with your expectations or needs or desires. And then if I'm going to add on a full vehicle paint protection film package and a window tint and ceramic coating go with it at, let's say, $10K, well, I might see a $350 to $400 swing in payment on top of everything else. That's uncomfortable.
Sure.
And then last but not least is that a lot of people take long-term loans. The benefit of the long-term loan is the payment is more affordable. The negative with the long-term loan is that you're paying off a lot less depreciation in every single payment than you would have been in a shorter-term loan. So you actually might exasperate the situation by doing a 72 or an 84-month. I've even seen a 96-month loan on a car. For the first time, I think it was last year that I saw this, and I realized right away, wow, like I really hope that the vehicle has that long a warranty or extended warranty, and that you're planning on owning it for literally that duration. So let's also recognize that you have other macroeconomic situations and that you are an election year. I think it's, it seems, at least from a lot of what I read, that there's a very high probability of a change within the party that's going to come, to power. And it's very normal in election years for people to have unrest about what is the economic situation going to look like with change. And then how is that going to impact, any given industry? And, are we going to be at a bigger standoff with some of the other countries that we currently trade better with or less with or what have you, or vice versa? And so there's always this like uncertainty in election years, more so than any other year. And then there's one other little issue, not little, I'm so sorry, I really shouldn't use that term. I feel guilty for even using it. And that is that you've got two outside circumstances which are horrible, right? And then you've got the situation that's happening in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia. And, there was electronics that were being manufactured in Ukraine for certain brands, and then they couldn't obviously happen. And then some of those electronics had moved over to Russia for production. And then you had these import restrictions on those Russian electronics. And so there's been circumstances that have revolved around the issue in Ukraine. And then now, most recently, of course, is Gaza and Israel, right? And the Hamas situation. And, being Jewish by birth, that's a complicated scenario for me, because at the end of the day, I hate what happened in the very beginning, but I'm not necessarily pleased with what's happened as a response. And, add one step further to it, my wife is Ukrainian, right? And so, again, I think that for a lot of people, the concern is like, wow, if we do end up going to war in the Middle East, what will that do to gas prices? And how is that going to affect the economic situation? So there's, again, just obvious issues or items that are genuinely affecting everything. Real quick, not to take too much time, but you mentioned the stock. Yes, that is a reality. Like, I think that it's a lot of times reliant upon what external people expect that that the company will do in first quarter. And of course, we always have these record quarters, quarter after quarter after quarter, and so people anticipate that growth maintaining at that level. And maybe they're not as aware of the economic situations that we just listed as being as much of a factor. And so when the expectation isn't met, then it, as you saw, it can have a dramatic impact on the share value. Internally, it sounds terrible because, of course, we're very respectful of our shareholders. They're extremely important to us. I don't want to make it sound like they're not. They are. But internally, it really doesn't have an impact, right? We don't borrow money against our share. We don't use shares to somehow determine the level of business that we can do. We're not slowing down on going out to our customer base and interacting with them or activating on new account opportunities. There isn't a hiring freeze. We still bringing people on. Maybe in some areas we're like, look, we don't need to add a person right now there. But, we've definitely still, it's crazy as this sounds. I think a lot of times people assume that the stock is going to dictate, how the company is now going to act. And again, I don't want to pretend that we don't weigh in on that, right? Like, if you had an opportunity to save $100,000 and then therefore it would affect your bottom line better, and then maybe the shareholders would feel more comfortable, yes, then as a responsible company, with or without a shareholder, you should look at it. And I think we successfully do that. But what makes me laugh is some of the stuff that you read online. And I remember somebody in particular talking about the fact that BlackRock owns over 13% of us, and I'm quite proud of that, to be candid with you. To have a company as awesome as they are and see all the stuff that they're involved in, and then want to own by choice as much share of us as they do, that's awesome. The hilarious part was people now then saying, well, then BlackRock is now controlling every decision that goes on within XPEL. They're not even sitting on our board. They haven't even asked, as far as I know, to put somebody on the board. And usually they're quite public about, hey, we're going to put somebody on your board because we feel we could do a better job. The other hilarious part is that if you actually went and looked, dollar-wise, they actually own a lot more dollars of Eastman and 3M than they do of XPEL. So maybe not quite the percentage, but dollar-wise, it's insanely more. So did everybody sit there and say, well, I guess BlackRock is controlling 3M and Eastman now? There is none of that. But, big target. Oh, wrong side. Big target on this logo, and I'll take it on.
I mean, definitely, excuse me, big target. I want to emphasize like what you said, because I totally agree with, at least from my perspective, that, the stock value going down was basically a victim of your own success. You guys had such outstanding quarters for so many years. I think you could almost see a parallel between Tesla's stock and how it shot up. And again, it's just because when there's such unbelievable quarters after quarters after quarters for years and years, the expectations are through the roof. People are willing to pay anything. It's not really different than real estate during its peaks. People are willing to pay anything. But then if there's a reality check, everybody has to stop and rethink, because maybe things are going to change. And the further you've gone down that path, the bigger the room for people to turn around and back up and say, so it's down compared to being up so much right now. As far as being a target, there's kind of this, I don't know if it's like a phenomenon like on Facebook but like essentially what I've come to see in the Facebook groups is like anytime there's any XPEL news, now typically it's like good news to XPEL. There's kind of like this visceral reaction where it's like you get the opposite. It's like, well, they're going to hell now, or like, well, this is the end, or like they deserve. And it's the kind of like this backward thing, because it's like good news, but then there's a post where it's like all questioned. And like you said, it's a target thing. But ultimately, I feel like, it probably comes from a fear of loss, right? Like if they're part of a different brand, they're possibly looking at XPEL as, hey, these guys could take my business, they can take something from me. They can put a competitor in my area, whatnot, and it could hurt my business. So I'm always going to root against them. And if I'm part of XPEL and I'm kind of part of that naysayer crowd, it might be because they're thinking, things are going so well, we've done so well, we're potentially afraid that something new that they're doing, such as, let's say, onboarding Tint World, may change something for them. So I really just think it comes down to fear of loss for everybody, XPEL dealers, non-XPEL dealers, and so on. Let's talk about Tint World and why, if you're in the XPEL network, you should not be upset. Whether you should be nonchalant, doesn't make a difference to you, or maybe a positive side. But let's talk about Tint World.
I of course expected this one to somehow.
We had to talk about Tint World. It's been all over and it's been nonstop. And then
look, I mean, here, let's make it even funnier then for everybody. Here, hold on.
Are we going to get Charles on?
No. But you know what? You should do a podcast with Charles one day. Let me really piss off a bunch of people here. Hold on. Let me just make sure that I'm wearing a shirt.
You're leading into the follow-up question, Chris, because the follow-up question, I'll just sandwich it in, was Window Film Magazine made this article, or not made.
Forget the other logo I had on. I'm wearing a different logo right now. Hey,
I see it, the Tint World, and he quoted Charles saying that after the deal was closed, that he received a call from someone at XPEL saying, we would like to potentially invest in you or potentially buy Tint World. So let's just sandwich that into why everybody should be afraid.
Let's sandwich that one first, because that one's real quick and easy.
Okay.
What happened was Charles wanted, of course, to do a really positive launch call with all the Tint World locations. He had notified them on Friday that they were moving over to us. And look, I don't know if people are aware of this or not, but we actually were contractually a second brand supplier for them already. Obviously, again, no disrespect to Eastman. Everybody knows that Eastman was their number one supplier, and they were a great supplier for them. The Tint World was not unhappy with Eastman. At least not that they've ever said anything to me, and I don't think that they would have held back. But we then had an opportunity to replace Eastman as their core product within paint protection film, window tint, and ceramic coating. And of course, as it's no secret that there's a bunch of other products coming to market very soon. And, we're planning on being partners with them in all that product as well. And what had happened was on the launch call, one of the franchisors had been like, yo, so when is XPEL buying Tint World? And I'm like, hey man, like we're always in acquisition mode. It's no secret. We make it very clear to everybody on all calls that we are definitely in acquisition mode, and we'd like to continue that. We're very strategic with acquisition. And if Tint World came up for acquisition and they asked us to take a look at it, I'm sure we would. But we take a look at literally just about everybody that says take a look at us. Now, some we dismiss really quick, and some we dive much heavier into. But that was more of a joke. Not a joke, unfair, but more of like just a casual like, yeah, hey, yeah, and me and Charles are now ribbing each other on the call. Like he's like, yeah, what am I calling you, boss? And blah, blah, blah. And it was hilarious. And then during an interview, from what I understand, that interview took those words and somehow made them a little more official than they definitely were. But again, I just want to be super clear. XPEL is in acquisition mode. We have bought a lot of companies over the last number of years. We are in the midst of another one. There's a massive one coming June 1st. Everybody is going to be shocked to shit. They're going to be excited. They're going to be happy. The team that's coming with it is unbelievable.
People on Facebook are going to be happy, you think, or no?
Say again?
The people on Facebook are going to be happy when it's announced, or no?
Hopefully not. I love the negative publicity. I mean, you know what? It actually makes people want us more. So keep it going.
It truly is. It's kind of an example of good conversation. You get to see somebody's thoughts and questions, and then somebody answer it. And that's what I hope to do now as well, is kind of get that other side, because that's how you truly understand the topic, I think.
Yeah. So anyways, look, I don't want to take this offline from what you first asked, which is the most important question. Why Tint World? And should it impact our independence in both a positive and negative way? And there was some XPEL customers in particular that I was concerned about. Some of them had not had maybe the best interactions with some of their Tint Worlds that were local to them. And so I was nervous to have the information hit their ears before I could get it to them, but that's the way it had to be, as you can imagine, through the NDAs and everything like that. And so I had conversations with each and every one of them, one by one afterwards. And the funny part is every single one was like, oh, now I get it, and I'm all in. And as a matter of fact, 4 of the 5 have reached out to Charles to at least inquire about now also owning Tint Worlds. Now, there's many, many more that we've had conversations with. And the reality is that they were already there. I mean, they already had a client base. They already had a massive client base. They are the largest, right, in North America. And I think, as a matter of fact, I'm positive the world. I can't say that categorically because I don't typically work with them, but I don't know of another tint operation that's like them. As a matter of fact, the second largest, which is, of course, mine and your dear friend, and was an amazing advocate for this, which was the actual person I was most concerned about, was Mike Burke. I think that Sunstoppers was the one that I was going to think would feel like this might be impactful against them, in that, they both are obviously very tint driven in just their name alone. They have a lot of locations that might be close to others. It's not going to be one. It's not going to be like my one store might have a Tint World near me, and so I've got to contend with that one customer. No, with Mike Burke, he's got 75 plus stores that might have 75 Tint Worlds. And how's to Mike? And Mike was literally a champion of it. He was like, I've always told you, Chris, that if you can bring somebody on that's going to do things right, that's going to market aggressively, spend an absorbent amount of money like I do in creating more brand recognition and creating more process and more professional ways of doing things, I'm all in. And, you know, just like XPEL, you know, things are different with XPEL now versus what it was 7 years ago or even 5 years ago. And that's really true of Tint World too. I had heard for years about how difficult Charles was to deal with, and that, you know, he would just, you know, you couldn't even get a word in, and that, you know, he'd just run you over. And this, I got to tell you right now, I have experienced the exact opposite. Not even close. Both of him and I are obviously quite rambunctious and excitable. And I actually was saying to both him and Burke just within the last couple of days, I think if you really look at Charles and Mike, you actually see an insane amount of similarity, other than the fact that, of course, Mike Burke is insanely taller, more buff, and, you know, what have you. But, you know, personality-wise and stuff like that, you know, two captains of the industry who've done unbelievable things. And so what I would say is that is the right mentality. That is the fact. The fact is that that Tint World is going to add an amazing amount of professionalism and marketing prowess and consistency and look and feel, and produce a massive awareness that wasn't happening. Look, previously, again, if you look at the Tint World boxes, the previous boxes, they were not brand, they weren't promoting the brand that they were with, right? And it's, again, funny because not to of course pick on Suntech or Eastman in general, because again, I really have a mad amount of respect for them, but it's one of the things that we talk about a lot. Like, they talk about their attributes, we talk about ours, and one of the things we love is that when you're with XPEL, we're doing a bunch of advertising for you, for the name XPEL, for the brand XPEL, for the verb XPEL, and you can't look at me and say that I'm not spending uber millions of dollars just in the US alone every year to drive that awareness. And yet, if you are with other brands, that is very possibly not happening. And so you're actually advertising for the manufacturer who is in the billions to make the awareness happen for them. I'm not a fan of that. Now, again, other people have very different mindsets regarding this, and I respect it. But I'm the little guy, I'm the shop. I don't want to have to take my marketing dollars and advertise you, the billion dollar production company. I want you to be alongside me. And so with Tint World, what is going to happen, and it hasn't happened as of yet, the contract got signed on a Thursday. It got announced to their team on a Friday. Now everybody is, you know, getting everything put behind the scenes and done. There will be a full rebranding of Tint World with Tint World powered by XPEL. And, you know, we'll make that recognition happen. You know, the other part that I think a lot of people were worried about is that historically maybe Tint World was much lower on price points, much lower. And again, I want to hand it to Charles, right? This person that I heard was impossible to work with. He's like, Chris, you guys are the experts. You guys are the experts with XPEL. You actually know what XPEL is worth to the consumer. And so rather than me telling you what I should charge for your products, I'd rather that you help me, because I'm a franchise. I do have to get to consistent pricing models. It's part of the franchise agreements and FDD and all the other stuff that he's doing for his franchises to make them a lot more successful than they would be on their own. And so can you help us understand what that pricing profile looks to a retail market? Well, I saw somebody sent me an image, this fake news image of this thing online just the other day, where a person had created a screenshot of, like, let's say a digital menu board inside a Tint World, and then put an XPEL logo on it and put these like super cheap prices. And some of my own friends were like, man, like, see, this is how XPEL is going to get destroyed by Tint World. And I'm like, yeah, but I hate to fucking tell you this. That's fake news. That image is total bullshit. I'm working with their department right now on an all new digital board with pricing and how it should be set up and make it a little cleaner, if you will. And like, again, like, helping them get to the next level, because that's what a partner should do. Not just sell you product, not just claim to be a partner, help you develop more business, new business avenues, new wholesale opportunities, a more successful platform, a more streamlined, interactive opportunity. And so, Tint World felt that XPEL was the new best choice for that. And again, they were very complimentary of Eastman. I of course know that Eastman wasn't happy, as I wouldn't have been either, to get the news like they did. But I think that if you were on the other foot, you would have had that happen too. You didn't hear me calling, some of the Eastman has recently won a couple of really good shops away from us with their Lumar brand. One in particular, I would say a friend of mine. I hope he feels the same way. Cougar from Lux Automotive and I definitely didn't see eye to eye on a lot of business things, but I always had mad respect for him. I thought he was an amazing operation. I loved the way that he displayed things and the money and effort that he put into his business. And look, he's no longer XPEL. He's Lumar. And he didn't notify me. He didn't call me up and give me a 3-month notice of change. He switched. And the only way I found out was because it was suddenly on social media. And somebody said, hey, did Lux switch? And I'm like, yeah, I guess they did. And I sent him a text saying, hey, congratulations, brother. I'm excited for you. I hope this next chapter is exactly what you're looking for. I know you're in the midst of building out your second store, and I'm sure you'll continue from there. And like, I'm happy for you. I didn't send him some message that would have been maybe more accurate, right? Like, hey, Cougar, I wish you had told me myself personally, and left on notified terms. Okay, sure, that's dreamland. I mean, come on. So, do I think that there's going to be some detriments to some shops? No, I really don't. I mean, again, if you look at Tint World and you look at just the last 24 months alone, and the talent that Charles has continued to bring in, he already had a lot of talent there. Paul Piero is an example of somebody that, him and I have not always seen eye to eye, but worked very respectfully with each other for quite a number of years as a second supplier to them. But, you now have John Norman, who is well known in a lot of the private equity space. My boss, Tony Rimas, knew him already quite well. And when we saw that John was now working for Tint World, we went, whoa, there's something very dramatic happening at Tint World that nobody, unless you really understand PE, is probably even paying attention to. And then you look at John Garrett and you look at JR, and the list keeps going on, and you're like, okay, today's company is nothing like what it was 5 years ago. And so you add to that something that, again, Josh Popenick, right? Josh, hope you don't mind. I'll just say it out loud. Josh was not a fan of the local Tint World operator. He had a number of run-ins where the local Tint World operator was saying a lot of trash talk supposedly about his shop, and, always bashing him and always undercutting him and all this shit. And that was and I knew about this. I knew about this for years, and I was concerned. He's not only a really dear friend of mine, but as you guys know, he's an amazing large client of ours. Won a massive award for us last year. And so I called him and I said, hey, like, I'm just wondering, how you feel about the Tint World. And by the way, I want to bring you up to speed on some things. There is a lot of people within the Tint World, previous Tint World ownership, as in franchisees, that might not be around as much longer now because they might not like some of the changes that are coming about. There is a next level of professionalism, if you want to call it that, or growing up, or maturism that's happening within Tint World, especially with all these new people coming on. And I wonder if there's going to be some changes for you. And he said, oh, he's laughing. He said, oh, it's already happened. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, oh yeah, it's already new ownership. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he's like, yeah, never hear anything negative from that store at all. And I'm sure it's great for the brand, like you said. And I was like, wow, okay. Like Josh is, like me, animated and willing to speak his mind. And, he was fully on board. Ray Van Dexter was getting pummeled with people, trying to, I fucking call it ambulance chasers. That's what it fucking is. There's a lot of piece of shits in this industry. That's just the reality. And I don't care who hears this and who doesn't. The term ambulance chaser is normally reserved for lawyers. And it's where, if you're not familiar with the term, it's where they're literally chasing an ambulance to the hospital after an accident or some sort of mishap, to then hope that when the person becomes conscious, they've got a contract in place for them with a pen in their hand that they can barely even hold, saying, here, sign your name here and bring me on as your official lawyer to represent you to sue whoever you just got injured by, including your own insurance company. Hence ambulance chasers. Within the legal profession, they're thought of as the scum of the earth. Well, there's a lot of sales reps in this business that are ambulance chasers, and you know who you are. Don't worry, I'll continue to decimate you. No problem. You're nothing.
So kind of circling back, you mentioned that XPEL has always been a product that Tint World could sell. It was their, right? Like it was their second tier film.
Yeah, I want to be more clear than that. It's not fully accurate. It's close. Okay. We had a contract in place with them whereby we agreed to provide DAP. Now, keep in mind that the contract was signed way back when, before I started with XPEL. That's how old it was. The contract was for 5 years, but it had an auto renewal clause within it that renewed for 1 year. And I was unaware of all these things. And so what had happened was there was a Tint World that wanted access to XPEL, and they were near, as a matter of fact, Randy Coffey, who now works for me, but, detail authority. And I was uncomfortable with the proximity. And I said, hey, I'm really sorry, but no, I'm not willing to sell to you. Number one, you won't be exclusive, which is something I require of everybody. And number two is that you're just too close for comfort, especially with being able to carry multiple brands, where all my guys in that area are already XPEL exclusive. They all dropped they all had the grandfather clause available, but they all decided to not take the grandfather clause and go exclusive. And so because of that, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to decline to bring you on board. That was my first interaction with Paul. Paul calls me. He lives in like Wilmington area or something like that, not even an hour and a half away from where I was in Myrtle Beach. And he's like, hey, did you know that we have a contract? And I'm like, yeah, but it's old and it was for 5 years, so I'm sure it's done by now. And he's like, have you ever seen the contract? And I'm like, nope. He's like, you need to take a look at it. You guys haven't canceled it. We haven't canceled it, so you're still obligated. And I'm like, oh, damn. So I turn around and I actually called Randy and told him the truth, right? Because the thing I don't do is lie. I just deal with it. Whatever may come, comes. And I said, hey, like, I know I said this to you, but unfortunately, the reality is that there is a contract in place that tells me that I do have to sell to them, and they get the software must be used with the film. That was actually in that contract, thankfully, because of course you know how I feel about that. And so we have to let them have access to us. And I know it sucks, but I can't negate a national contract. And Randy is a level-headed individual. He's not as maybe emotional as I am, to say the least. And so he was like, look, I get it. It sucks, but I appreciate you calling me back and making me aware of it. So that is the actual scenario. Then time went along, and what I decided to do, along with my partner in crime, Eric Cummins, the Senior Director of Revenue, we agreed that we would send Tint World a cancellation of contract. But I did call Paul before sending it and said, hey, I just want you to be aware that this is coming. And if you guys would like to sit down and talk about possible future together, then let's do so. And if you don't, then I appreciate it, but we're not providing notice. Paul and some of his team members met up with me at SEMA. We had a preliminary conversation. Charles reached out to me on LinkedIn. Him and I started talking. Then John Norman started reaching out. I'm on a plane. I'm stuck on a plane for like an hour and a half. I'm like, hey, it's a good chance for me to get a phone call in with with John. John and I mean, I was listening to him thinking of Tony the whole damn time and was like, wow, holy shit, this company is totally different than anything it has been in the past. And we need to pay attention and maybe look at becoming partners. So
yeah, look, circling back to the price.
Yeah.
I think the kind of worry, like you said, that I saw online most prevalent was as if the price Tint World was going to somehow be able to operate at some cutthroat low price. And like at the end of the day, they have, from what I've seen, many beautiful locations. They still have to buy the film. They have to pay the installers. They have to turn the lights on. They have all the overhead and same bills that every other shop has.
Oh, they have more. They have royalties. They have all these other things that they absolutely must pay for.
Even more, right?
Displays that they have to have. They have Swiss tracks that they have to have. They have a uniform look that they have to. I mean, some of their stores are absolutely gorgeous. I went and looked at Dan Billings' new shop here in San Antonio. And then I was like, wow. I went to, oh my God, he's going to kill me for forgetting his name right now. I went to his grand opening. Brother, you're probably listening. Don't be mad at me. I'm trying to remember. Pete Muller. Shit, he's going to kill me after this call. Pete, I'm so sorry. I went to Pete Muller's grand opening of his Orlando location a couple of years ago. I mean, they've got some gorgeous, standardized setup locations. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Forgive me.
Oh, no, you didn't at all.
Okay, good. So, yeah, I'm with you, and again, like, think about that experience, right? I mean, if you could walk into any XPEL store and have a very consistent feeling about the business that you're dealing with as a retail consumer, I get it. Like, that's quite attractive. Like, again, it's no secret that a lot of the keyboard warriors that I would love to at one day get permission from legal to notify that I'm going to share their recorded phone calls where they called in and had a one-on-one with me or one of my reps and begged to have XPEL and would do anything to drop the other brands and did tell me all the pieces of shit that the other brands are for why, which of course is never fully accurate. Let's be clear. You always say what you want when you need to try and get what you want or where you want, or at least a lot of people do. If I could share those conversations, I would and gladly do so because I'd love to put people on notice for it. But this is why we turn down so many operations. A lot of it has to do with the fact that we go deep diving into their location in the setup and what does it look like and what are their reviews look like and how long have they been in operation. And I'm not saying we go as far as like looking at people's credit score or have they ever been arrested. I mean, no, but we definitely take I think a much harder look than certainly most brands do. I know that 3M has a very rigid process with regards to approving an account. I commend them for that. I don't know that Eastman does or not, by the way. So I'm sure they do for Formula One, right? Their premier brand. Maybe they do for Lumar and Suntech as well. So again, forgive me if they do or don't. I really don't know the answer. But, there's certainly a lot of brands that take any money from anybody at any given moment in time and don't care about that customer experience. And that's not us.
We've touched on, or you've mentioned DAP a couple times. And, I kind of have a question on DAP that, my question is this. A couple of years ago, you mentioned at the beginning of this call that, a couple of years ago, DAP went to be exclusive for XPEL dealers. And that was kind of timed, not on purpose, or I have no idea if it was on purpose, but it was timed similarly to like Core really getting its feet and coming out and kind of getting out there. Maybe Core came out after, maybe before. I really don't remember. I'm not saying they're related, but coincidentally, when a large group of shops can't use DAP anymore, now they have the options that previously existed as well as Core, which, is possibly the company, let's say outside of XPEL, that's putting a tremendous amount of effort into programs. or into cut program, I would say it would be Core with Eastman. 3M, I think, would be fair to keep in there. And then I really don't know if there's others that are like actively working tremendously hard to improve their UI and patterns and so on. I just don't know. Right. Okay. So where I'm getting with the question, I guess, is, do you think possibly that over time, because DAP is no longer a competitor in the market, they're kind of in their own ecosystem, that there's less pressure on XPEL to potentially innovate and compete versus these other programs, as opposed to if there's this kind of direct consumer pressure of, or when I say consumer, I mean dealers going, I choose this, I choose this. No. Do you think it has any effect long-term?
No, well, okay. My answer, from what I believe your question is, and forgive me if I've got this a little wrong, is that DAP is, sorry, again, not to sound disrespectful to other brands, right? But I think that almost anybody would agree with me, including all my good friends at Tint World, that the DAP patterns are the most consistent, most robust platform, bar none. Nobody's close to us in that. And there are people that claim otherwise, and I'm like, sorry, this is the one area where you cannot ever convince me that anybody else is close. What I would definitely agree with is that Core is the second closest. I personally feel that there's still a dramatic variance. I think a lot of that has to do with some strategy on our part. The acquisition of Auto Nouveau and blocking them from having access to, Herb Chambers because we service them as an example of that. But again, to be very fair to Eastman especially, they are putting an absorbent amount of time and effort and money and resources behind this. And they're 100% trying to make that less and less true by the day. They made acquisitions that were impactful for them in order to try and make that better. And they have a phenomenal platform. Their software is extremely easy to use. And I would equate that to like Apple in comparison, like Android, which is, I think, what DAP previously was. I think that there was that dramatic of a variance in terms of the ease of use of platforms. So for that, I commend Core especially. I think that they've been the most innovative in that, especially.
You kind of right there, if I could kind of cut you.
Yeah, sure.
That, I think you worded it kind of what I was trying to get out essentially was, from my perspective, what I've seen online is, like you kind of said, I agree, where nobody really says there's better patterns than DAP. I don't see that. It's usually DAP's got the patterns, and then Core is got the kind of like an easier interface, like you mentioned. And, that's in essence, there was a recent post that's what was being discussed. And that's what kind of triggered that question was, if I'm XPEL, if that customer is not choosing between DAP or Core, they're either access to one or the other, because, how incentivized is XPEL to say, hey, we have to make this easier?
Extremely. Look, XPEL's model from Ryan Pape down is there's no tomorrow. There is no tomorrow. We move fast on every single decision we make. In comparison to a lot of other large brands, it's not even apples to watermelon comparison. But to be ignorant of the fact that Core was, and probably still is, an easier to use platform is really dumb on our behalf. Because again, as they're trying very hard to develop patterns as quick as we are and as consistent as we are, and trying to get better on all that, whether or not they are or not is not the question, right? But then they're obviously making serious progress, or hopefully making some progress against our pattern database. We can't then ignore the fact that their platform is easier to use, right? And so, DAP Next it's evolution 5.0 in comparison to DAP. It's insanely easier to use. There is still nuanced differences between the usage of Core and DAP Next, but I think at that point it's much more like Apple versus Apple, and there's maybe differences between, let's say, a MacBook Pro and an iPad, right? There might be some variation in terms of like some keys that you would use, maybe the mouse click, whatever, that maybe makes more of a difference. And DAP Next, like Core, is absolutely becoming a full-blown CRM. You know, the Vindicoding we've had for a long time. We have our own software app on our phones that you can use regarding it. You know, we have invoicing, we have job boarding. We have all these things that we need DAP Next to evolve into, to stay on top and be the leader. Look, XPEL, Ryan Pape, is not interested in us being mediocre in anything. And I admit openly, as I have many times before, that I don't pretend to be absolutely the best at every single thing that we offer. What I can tell you is that we're definitely trying to be the best at every single thing that we offer. We're never slowing down on that. There is no tomorrow. And more importantly, my position is that we are the only company that really genuinely has a very complete package to offer in all spaces, right? The area that we're missing is the area that both Eastman and 3M are rolling out with any minute, which is their colored dry apply paint protection film. So congratulations to them. I'm obviously excited for the fact that that will create more awareness within the industry, that this is hopefully a fantastic product and a very successful product launch for them. You know, it's no secret that we're going to have our colored PPF very shortly as well, but not as fast as they did. You know, Eastman beat us to the punch with 72-inch. Hey, good job on them, right? They deserve a round of applause for that. You know, we don't like coming up second, and yet we did in that case.
Competition breeds innovation, though, right? Like that's what it is it makes everybody level up. Yeah,
there's some healthy competitors, right? And there's some piece of shits, and that's just the way it is. And, you know, there's some brands that are from, I don't want to say where, that are not North American brands, as in market as North American brands or anything, but from countries where they have, let's just say, relaxed laws on patents and stuff like that. And so I won't, again, say a brand name, but what I do appreciate is that there is, as much as people don't want to realize this, there's collaboration that happens from the big brands, sometimes behind the scenes, that they're just not aware of, especially when it comes to pattern infringement, which we all call intellectual property, right? And what I can tell everybody on this call is that if you're participating in any way, shape, or form with a pattern that belongs to Eastman, or a pattern that belongs to 3M, or a pattern that belongs to XPEL, I hope you have the world's greatest lawyer and the biggest pockets, that it won't matter if we sue you for an intellectual property infringement, because I promise you, all of us are coming after you. There are some lawsuits that are coming, that are already in play right now, and there's much larger ones coming. And I'm pretty sure they're coming from all three of us, because we all pay a lot of attention. And it's so, I mean, some people are just so stupid. They really are. They just
happen because Eastman put out, like, somebody had posted an email they got from Eastman recently, Core, basically what you just said, like, hey, we're watching you, we see you, we're coming after you. I mean, it was like a kind of like, it reminded me of like George Bush talking after 9/11 in a way. Like, it was like, you know, we're coming. Just, you know,
I actually got the same email, and I was like really impressed with it. And I was so impressed with it that the first thing I did was sent it to Tony and Ryan and said, can we please duplicate this? And sorry, Eastman, I don't mean to steal your thunder or steal from you, but I'm just being honest. It was great play. And be like, can we steal this and, you know, and send it to our clients as well, and jump on board with this, right? You've got some countries that are far away from North America geographically that think that the rest of us are so stupid. But then the dumbest part is that, and that's unfair. Let me retract the dumbest part. Let me retract just that part of it. The part that's concerning is that some other brands here in North America are then having them reskin it and then offer it with their product.
Oh gosh.
That is the part that I'm not happy about. And what I mean by that is that XPEL takes this probably more seriously in terms of opportunistic lawsuit that we must deal with and go after.
Yeah.
Well, let's say I'm Hardy brand, and I got a company in China that's offering me patterns and says I'll reskin it as Hardy software. Guess what? The second I sell one pattern is the second that, if it's an Eastman pattern, I'm fucked. They are going to sue me. I am responsible. That is a fact. It doesn't matter where I got it from.
Right.
And so I would caution any company right now that is dealing with some of these companies. I would rather not see you guys go bankrupt as a result of something like this. I would really rather see you guys continue to succeed because you guys do develop some innovative, great products. I would drop that platform literally this, like now, this second.
Wow, that's crazy, because as far as I know, and I'm curious if you know differently, like the companies in those countries that are doing that are very tough to maybe go after. But if they're reselling it to people in the United States, those are very easy to go after.
Yeah,
Like,
extremely easy, and you go after them first, and then you still go after the ones, let's say in China. Like you said, like China is one of those countries where there's supposedly, from a lot of people's perspective, like no patent protection. That's not true. Eastman's gone after companies there. We've gone after companies there. 3M's gone after companies there, and we've all won.
the tool stuff that goes on is like, it's like if anybody posts any tool, I feel like you could almost like post a fake tool, something that's completely useless, and you'll see a Chinese manufacturer has it ready in like 2 weeks, comes in different colors, they can put your logo on it. Like it's a very quick turnaround. Like they are watching.
Right, and so like and that's totally accurate, right? But the hope from their end is that you're not going to afford a lawsuit in China to spend $100,000 or $200,000 or $500,000 to litigate and sue them. Well, you're going to recover all your legal fees, and so if you're a company like us or Eastman and 3M, you got war chest ready to do that. You don't care, and you're going to, and it's going to work. But where I wish it wasn't true was that I think that there's a lot of companies that are currently using and or looking at these opportunities and not realizing how serious the situation is.
Wow.
And I don't wish, of course, on that, because that US lawsuit, I mean, you're talking intellectual property. The award of damages that could plausibly happen. It's only a company like us or 3M or Eastman that could survive that kind of lawsuit financially. And that's why Eastman is, amazing at the idea that they will not in any way, shape, or form permit anything to go on that looks nefarious in that respect. And same with XPEL and same with 3M, right? And I think that again, it's been a code of ethics amongst the three of us for a long, long time. And I'm proud of that for everybody.
It's interesting. Who knew? I mean, you knew, but I didn't know there was like pattern wars going on there.
Yeah, XPEL's been involved in lawsuits for many, many years. And finished them. It started years ago, right?
Yeah.
Tim Hart, who is one of the original founders, that's one of his main roles within this company to this day. And it's funny because people assume that, if they make a minor modification to the pattern, we can't prove that it's our pattern. Every single time we've proved it to judges who had no clue what they were looking at, but were able to show them, as has Eastman. Let me be fair to Eastman and 3M, so have they. And again, these guys, like these companies that do this, I'll adjust the edge right here, and then therefore it won't look like theirs. Right. No, we'll do an overlay, and if 99% of it looks like ours, with a minor adjustment, 1 millimeter each way or something like that, it's still obvious. So whatever.
So what do you think is a shop, as the economic environment, continues to kind of adjust and shift, and, like you said, we're in a election year, it's an uncertain time, and what you mentioned with car purchases and the differences in prices and so on and all that. When you take all that information in, you're a shop owner and you want to make some actionable, you take all that information, you say, what do you take from it? What do you do from it? What would you recommend?
Yeah, look, and you and I have talked on the last podcast about this to some extent. It just wasn't as aggressive as this was, right? And that we were like, look, stop pretending that COVID 2022 is now the benchmark year. It's not. It was an anomaly. It was amazing. but you should be benchmarking 2019 as your realistic platform to beat. 2021, 2022, no. 2023, you know, at the tail end of it, we were already starting to see some adjustments. I mean, I think that really it started around summer, but it was really obvious in final quarter. You know, like you said, in our case, you know, as maybe some others did, we had some opportunity to unload some extra inventory and put cash in the books, and you know, and so we did, and that probably affected a little bit of our first quarter 2024. But you know, you've got to go out and you've got to work again. You know, Mike Burke, you know, great example again, Sunstoppers, who have, of course, worn his shirt quite a few times on here as well. And I were having a great conversation, which is people got to get back to work. You know, the endless line of people waiting at your door, begging for you to work on their car within the next 3 weeks is done. Now, there is exceptions, right? I mean, you talk about Evan at 1 of 1, or you talk about, you know, Brett Miller at All American. And I mean, I'm sure there's a Detail and Dynamic. I mean, geez, I'm sure there's a lot that still have this like long waiting list, right? And for good reason, you know, but the majority of them have gone from like a 3 week or 4 week before I can get you in to a 1 week. Some of them are even saying I can get you in tomorrow. Now, maybe tomorrow it changes to 1 week booked out again, 2 weeks booked out again. But let's go back to selling properly. Let's go back to the basics. Let's go back to showing the clients the real value of what they're getting from the products that we're all offering, whether it's coatings or paint correction or color change or PPF or windshield protection or tint. And let's help them understand that there is a very big difference between, you know, a basic film for looks versus a performance film, you know, and then what they should anticipate out of that. And then, you know, in coatings, what should you really expect to get out of coatings versus what you might think coatings delivers for you. And then understand that there's a maintenance to that, right? I think that the part that a lot of people miss, you know, again, you know, hats off to my friends at All Set Auto, who recently switched over to XPEL as well. They have a really cool platform where they have a lot of follow-up with the customer base, the retail client. They're providing them with care packages after installation, and the purpose is twofold. One, to help set the bar straight and set the bar in terms of how to care for their vehicle properly, but also to make sure they have more touch points, right? I loved, you know, David and I back in British Columbia had set up a platform where we were recommending to every single customer with paint protection film to please come in after 2 weeks. And we would do a free wash and a free inspection, not a free, but like an inspection at the same time, because we wanted to confirm that all our edges had locked down and there wasn't anything that was glaring after the film had dried out and that maybe we should replace and redo, or, you know, that we're not satisfied with ourselves. And we didn't want to wait till the next summer before the person had a complaint. But what we did was we also provided a care package. You know, I love Tiffany at All American. She has this beautiful black bag with and it's matte black with the AAPP embossed in gloss, and it looks sick. They give that to every single customer. But guess what? When the client runs out of that, guess what they're doing? They're going back to the shop for another touch point, to reload, to buy again. So like what I would say is that, you know, you need to get your sales process dialed in. And I tell you what, why don't we just release some news now that I'm sure I'll get in shit for. Ryan, forgive me. I am super stoked in that Ryan Pape had an opportunity to visit with Mike Burke just yesterday. He's going to be coming. He's on Mike's podcast as soon to be. Maybe we can have him on Tint Wiz sometime soon too. But Mike Burke is becoming a contractor for XPEL. Mike Burke is really passionate about helping shops out to grow to that next level, and to understand that business is changing always evolving, and you need to evolve with it. And how do you do that? Put more official programs in place and stuff like that. And so Mike Burke will be working with XPEL exclusive operations, and that is one of the features that we want to offer within that exclusive community. And, he is going to be developing a very robust platform and program that he's going to be presenting to Ryan, I think, next week. I'm not sure if Thad will be involved or not, one of his right-hand men, but or Audrey for that matter. I really don't know. But I'm excited, and I'll probably get into shit for making that announcement before the documents are signed. But fuck it, I love upsetting people.
Well, congratulations to Mike and XPEL on that move.
Yeah.
So, marketing, like, if we look at the different components that go into operating a business, paint protection, tint, and so on, we obviously have material costs.
Yeah.
Would it be safe to say material costs are probably not going down? They're probably going to go up,
Yeah,
little by little over time, as they have over the years for all brands over the time.
For sure. And think about it. A lot of our products are petroleum based, right? If not all of our products. And so what if there was a Middle East all out war? And what if the price of petroleum raises dramatically? Every manufacturer has been affected not only by material cost adjustments, but a lot more so by labor cost adjustments. I think it's very true, especially of the big companies, Eastman, 3M, and ourselves. The labor costs are insanely more than they used to be. And that's true for every shop. I mean, any shop you talk to, all of their staff is making more, demanding more, wanting more. Hey, let me work from home. Let me work 4-day week instead of 5. I mean, the COVID situation has exacerbated a lot of that. But, we went, some brands maybe do it better than us, and that they have a yearly price increase. And it's maybe with the same lines as inflation, or maybe it's like cola. I don't know, but I definitely know that some brands do it every single year. And XPEL historically has not. We do it when we absolutely feel that it's now time that we have no way around it. But unfortunately for us, the messaging is a little more negative, right? If you don't do it as consistently and as often, then people almost feel like they're caught off guard, and they're not happy about that. When you sit there and say, look, like, I haven't done one for a year and a half or 2 years or 3 years, as it's been in the past, hopefully that's more important to them. But price increases are something that, if you see milk going up, if you see gas going up, if you see your own labor costs going up inside your store, how can you not anticipate that that's true for every operation out there? And so you need to raise your prices and not be afraid of it. And that's the other part. I had a number of shops where, to this day, 5 years, it's been 5 years where I've seen that they haven't done a single price increase to the retail business or their wholesale business. And I'm like, why? And they're like, oh, I'm afraid that the customer won't come to me. And I'm like, really? So you're actually completely selling on price instead of value then? Like, that's literally what you're telling me in my mind. That's what you're telling me. And I think it's ridiculous, and I'm sorry that they feel that way, but I don't, and I wouldn't. And I think that, you can, if you think about it, if you did a 10% price increase, that means that you can actually afford to do 9 out of every 10 cars that you were doing before and still actually end up with the same profit or more. So, the fear of price increases, I think, is ridiculous. Where I am concerned is that you have a lot more people entering this market than ever before. And I think that that's a lot of what's really happening, right? Is that because there's just this influx of individuals that are thinking that paint protection film and window tint and paint correction, ceramic coating is super easy, and they'll, tell the customer whatever they want to get the product on the core, and those prices might be much lower. That's what you should benchmark yourself off of, and obviously I'm not in alignment with that. So I think that you should be confident in what your shop has to offer, and the level of service, and the level of craftsmanship and professionalism, and change your prices according to the market.
And, that's material potentially going up. As shops, maybe things slow down, they may put more focus into marketing, which can raise kind of marketing costs. If you're using like, pay-per-click ads and so on, that drives the cost of marketing potentially up. Labor, like you said, it seems like labor is like just goes up and up and up as the demand for installers goes up. But potentially if shops start closing and
very too short, so getting a little bit, my apologies. Keep going.
as potentially if shops were to slow down and some close and so on, there is a chance that labor costs potentially could drop in the future, just depending on, that's a supply and demand thing, where the marketing probably is only going up, the materials probably going up, and then we have, rent, electricity, and so on, which is probably going up. So if you're one of those people, like you said, that is afraid of raising your prices, time is not on your favor. And you can kind of, I think, little by little be digging yourself into a hole. And when you look around 10 years from now, you might be real deep because, again, like you said, if you're operating within the same customer base and you're not ever raising your prices, when you do, it's going to be a huge problem as well, as opposed, and like that goes for, you mentioned a film supplier, but that obviously can also roll over to a dealer to their consumer.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you have people or shops that have like gotten into this like habit of providing their ongoing customers the same price they've always supplied them with, especially the repetitive ones, the ones that are bringing in another car every single year. And that client is saying, well, because I bring you so much business, I deserve to maintain this price level or even better than you've already provided me with. But the reality is that I've got to have an affordability prospect to this. So I don't agree with that. I do agree, of course, that volume customers deserve a discount, right? I mean, look, XPEL does it. We have tiered pricing. We're very open about it. If you hit a certain level of purchase and you're exclusive, then you get a discount. If you go to a next level, you get another discount. And on window film, we have 5 different levels. And on paint protection film, we have 4. By the way, sorry, Canada, but I think it's 3 in Canada because we already subsidize a little bit of the exchange rate. But, we're proud of that. And I think that every business should operate on that. What I don't like is the sense of entitlement, right? And any client that's bringing you that kind of business is probably a pretty savvy business person themselves, or they made it in, I don't know, the rock industry or an actor or actress. So I think that they should be completely content with the fact that business is business and prices have to change and move the needle. The other part, sorry, real quick, is to consider this, right? The clients that we have, the clients that all of us have, all these big brands, right? Let's say a roll of paint protection film. Well, a roll of paint protection film for any of us is, whatever. Call it anywhere between $1,000 and $1,200, $1,400 for a 16-inch roll. Some brands are more than others, but the average full car, which is what that roll is doing, is $6,000, $7,000. So I'm like, wow, like if I raise my price on $1,000, which I'm not, I'm more than that, but if I was $1,000, I just increased your price on that car by $50. You are making 6 to 7 times what I charge you for your labor. And I'm not saying you don't deserve it. You definitely do. But if you raised your price, the equivalent, which was 5%, your 5% on $7,000 is $350 versus the $50 extra it's costing you. You just made $300 more by saying, hey, my suppliers went up 5%. I did the same. Really? That's that hard? I think that's the easiest thing in the world to do. And so you actually should make a lot more money utilizing whatever price increase Eastman or 3M or XPEL provide you with. If you end up utilizing that sort of word track. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah. And I think probably part of that resistance in raising the price comes from people who maybe they're selling it themselves. They're the salesperson. They just don't feel comfortable. Like they just don't have it in them to feel confident in that price. Or potentially people who are operating at such a maybe level, like a minimum level, to where they say, if I raise my price and I lose some of my customers, I can't operate. I can't afford to. I can't risk it. Every single sale I need. And if I touch the price, I just can't even find out what happens. And I think like the solution to me, which maybe is going to sound like maybe a little too easy, or easier said than done, is, that's why you need money. Essentially, you need money as a reserve for your business so that you can make moves in confidence. You can adjust the price and not be worried if it somehow resulted in a slow week or a slow 2 weeks or a month. It's also so that you can have a reserve to be able to deploy towards marketing so that you can go out there, because if you literally are talking to the same people all the time, like, it is going to be more difficult. But if you have a strong marketing, like, you can put some of that money into marketing, you in return get some new customers, they're happy to pay for that in price increase because it's not an increase to them, and you've got to keep that like circle going. So there is such thing, I think, as being like too small.
Sorry, there's a caveat to all that though. And that is working capital. So again, you having your own shop before, you understand where I'm going with this. There's a lot of clientele, regardless of brand, that doesn't want to or doesn't at all service wholesale business, especially dealerships and body shops. And I get it, right? Because, Dave and I service quite a few dealerships in Kamloops alone, never mind other places. And one of the places that we serviced was on Vancouver Island. I won't say the name of the dealership, but they had booked quite a bit of work with us, and we were doing everything that they had asked us to in terms of sending the invoices over and waiting to get paid. Well, a lot of dealerships historically have not been as consistent in repayment as you'd like them to be. They're not all Penske's, which are amazing at paying you instantaneously or very close to it. Some of them maybe purposely choose not to pay on a very quick turnaround. And so in particular, this dealership was into us for over 7 months without a single payment, without a single dollar. And we were performing work on minimum between 20 and 30 cars a month. So if you assume that the average wholesale ticket was $1,000, which it was more, but let's just say it was $1,000, and let's say you're doing 20 a month, not 30, that's $20,000 that you've got to lay out of your pocket that you're not anticipating, getting back. Well, then it gets, of course, sorry, did I say 20,000? I apologize. Yeah, 20,000. So you now exasperate that by going 7 months without payment. This dealership was into us for, I think, well over $200,000. And the answers were like, we would call like, hey, you didn't submit the right RO, you didn't submit the ticket properly, the stock number doesn't coordinate with your blah, blah, blah. Like, it was just an answer. It was just an ongoing problem. Like, and if it wasn't for the fact that we had this amazing operation in Kamloops, straight up, if we were just two people and set up from scratch without any of that background and without any finance behind us, we would have had to have gone bankrupt over that single dealership. Like, we couldn't afford to float all that, pay the staff, pay all the material, pay the heat, hydro, and rent and marketing and, phones and everything, right? Because that's what happens, right? With a dealership, I'm performing the work today and I'm getting paid 30 to 60 days later. So you quite often will run into a scenario when it gets a little slower where your cash reserves get depleted quite heavily. And then you're like, I know that I need wholesale work now. I didn't want to do wholesale work before because I had this endless list of retail clientele showing up, wanting to spend more money with me. I couldn't even service them. And I was like, guys, like that's a really, like, for me, that's a very poor outlook. Wholesale work is gold. I realize that the dealership wants it done right now, but there's a reason for that. It's not some personal thing. They're not trying to abuse you. It's because they don't want the deal canceled before the car gets over the curb and the customer thinks secondly about getting it from them at all. And like, and you think that they're always trying to beat you down on price, but again, it's the dealership. They're providing the number one largest client you could ever get singularly by a long shot. No retail customer can equate what a dealership can do for you, but the financing part is the hard part, right? And so I want to say a huge thanks to my boss, Tony, who actually helped me with the clear approval from Ryan Pape to put something together that is unique to XPEL. It will not be possible to be offered through any other brands. We made sure an exclusivity contract with the supplier, and as far as we know, they're the only ones that are capable of doing it. But for our XPEL exclusive stores, if you want, you should get a hold of your TM this second, text them or her, and say, hey, Chris was talking about some wholesale program whereby I go in and do the work today at a dealership. I use this platform to do the invoicing, and I get paid 24 hours later inside my bank account. Minus, it's something tiny. It's like 3.9% processing fee. It's like a credit card charge. And that's it. And get set up. So Eurotech, my dear friends, Danik and Mike, allowed us to use them, use is the right word, as the, testing opportunity for this platform. Mm-hmm. There was some hiccups in the beginning. There was, hey, the invoices were not being populated, or maybe they went to the wrong dealership. Like any software platform, there was some difficulties for the first couple of months, but Eurotech puts out hundreds of thousands of dollars every month in wholesale work. And they were floating many hundreds of thousands of dollars on the street for servicing that work, because they look after a lot of dealerships. And now they have zero. Every dollar that they perform in work is paid in 24 hours or less.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, we launched that at a dealer conference, but it was a very soft launch, again, because we knew that as we brought more people in, the platform needed to see if it could handle the addition. Just so we are clear, the platform already produces $800 million a month in revenue exchange, but it's not XPEL, right? It's completely different. But they're, as far as we could find, the only ones in the industry that could even do this. And so I'm excited about that because, again, a lot of the accounts that I've been speaking to for years saying you should get into wholesale are now coming to me saying, hey, I went on a hiring spree during COVID. I built a larger facility during COVID. I thought that was what business should be like from now on. And I'm not in that same circumstance with the workload. Can you help me? Yeah, not only can I say you should do this, and here's some ideas on how to approach dealerships and what have you, but maybe we can even go into a preload program in the dealership for you and really whet their appetite, get them started, get them up and running, and then have you take the gravy, which is the finance, right? We all know the gravy is the finance. The gravy is not the preload. But and maybe, just maybe, we can help activate that for you. But not only that, we can fund it for you in 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Not bad.
That's huge. Like you said, cash flow, going back to
cash flow.
What companies need is you need cash flow for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of shops that I don't know if went on a hiring spree, but definitely upgraded facilities shortly after COVID, David Chuckman had his grand opening.
I was there
for quite a while. If you watch his live streams, for anybody who watches live streams on YouTube and Facebook, A Day in the Life of, it's a weekly live stream. And he had his grand opening in his beautiful facility. Like you said, you were there. Tell me about it.
And well, look, number one, David is one of those shop owners I think a lot of people should really pay a lot of attention to in terms of who to emulate, right? Who should you look up to in this industry if the idea is that you want to grow? And let me be fair and candid. A lot of people don't want to grow. A lot of people are much smaller operations. They buy a certain amount of product per year. They have a very consistent customer base. They maybe have an assistant and a front desk person, and that's it. And they don't want to take on more work. And to them, I say, man, you're in a happy place of your life, work-life balance, financial, etc. Stay there. Don't let me or anybody else try and convince you otherwise. But what I would also say is that if you do want to take it to the next level, make sure that you're aligned with the right brand, a brand that a consumer is going to recognize, a brand that's actually going to be around in 15 or 20 years to be able to handle warranty claims, because they are going to come up, a brand that is not afraid to, litigate on your behalf and or their behalf, things like that, right? But also is to obviously look at some mentorship, and no matter what, you've got lots of individuals out there in this community that are worth looking at. David Chuckman is one of them. TriTech Tint, when I met him, wow, I don't even know now. It was 5 years ago, I guess. It was just before COVID, I'm pretty sure. David, you'll have to forgive me if I'm wrong. but maybe it was less than that. But he was with another brand, and he was contemplating moving over to XPEL, and then he made the transition. And but he was always like really aggressive on marketing and hiring and training, and keeping more people through the hiring and training process. It was never like, well, I've got enough, let me stop, let me keep going. And he built a flagship store. That store is gorgeous. I mean, shit, the walls look like they're marble, even in the shop. He's got stunning lighting. He's got a beautiful front entrance. He's got a gorgeous waterfall. The never mind the lighting inside the shop for the workmanship, but the lighting like at the front counter, I was like, man, I don't know where you got those. I love those. His personal office, I think if I went there again, I'd kick him out of his own office, even though he'd probably beat the shit out of me, and tell him, hey, I want this office for the day myself. He's really streamlined it. He's made a customer waiting room. It's gorgeous. The furniture in there. And, he had a lot of support, including from some competitors. Man, there was a lot of his competitors that came out for his grand opening and congratulated him and stuff. And I'm like, see, that's the way it needs to be done. Like, I don't want to pretend that another brand is something you're not competing with, but within your existing brand, number one, I say this over and over again, you should be single branded. If you're Eastman, Lumar, you should be Lumar only. If you're 3M, you should be 3M only. XPEL only. I really believe that. I think that the client experience is perfect for that. But then within that, you have a community. Your XPEL community is your XPEL community. You should be pumping each other up. Same with Eastman and same with, 3M. Like, you shouldn't be trying to tear another 3M guy down if you're 3M as an example. It's just bad for everybody within that community, within that whole space. And you don't think it gets online and it ends up in the consumer's hands some way, shape, or form? Of course it does. It's a land of technology, man. But again, going back to David, it's a man that I really admire. Like everybody, he's very protective of his business. He's put a lot of time and effort into it. There are times where he will openly tell me he's not 100% aligned with my decision or one of the teammates' decisions. And he'll ask me about it and we'll talk it through. And sometimes we'll come out of it saying, hey, it's a change happening, or there's no change happening, but we get it. And, we try really hard to work with someone, especially like that, because they are continually growing, right? They are the future. And not that the guys that aren't growing aren't really important. They're extremely important. But the Sunstoppers, the Allsets, the Tint Worlds, the list just could go on forever with this XPEL community of individual shops. I mean, man, have you looked at Sage Motorsports in Florida? I mean, I think that a lot of people don't realize how insane they are. Detailers of Naples, Auto Paint Guard, Pepe, I mean, these are the movers and shakers. The guys at Sage shocked the shit out of me. Knox Details, another one. Esoteric. I mean, wow. Esoteric is a company that I'd be paying a lot of attention to as well. Rick Putoff at Eclipse.
Isn't it crazy how many shops you're naming that are exceptional, that have crazy facilities, whereas just to the point of how the industry has evolved over the last 5, 10, 15 years, like there was no shops or a handful or very, very, very much. And now it's kind of like become the benchmark, almost like to try to achieve that level of, look and feel and square footage.
Yeah. I mean, again, Billy Ellis built out a beautiful shop. And again, getting back to Billy, look at a lot of the Tint Worlds a lot of them are stunning regardless, right? Because Charles has mandated that you've got to have a obviously certain look to your Tint World, but they're gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
They've got beautiful digital boards, pricing menus and stuff like that, and some really slick displays. But and I apologize for 3M and Eastman in particular that I can't think of brands. Well, actually, no, I can. Look at Cougar at Lux. That's a gorgeous shop. That is truly a beautiful store. And I apologize, 3M, that I can't think of one off the top of my head for you guys, but I'm sure that you guys obviously have a number of them as well. These stores are are what a customer should experience at this kind of price point. You know, there should be that level of quality that you're walking into, you know, and I'm not going to be the person to pretend that every single store that's XPEL is at that level. No, I understand that they're not all. And, you know, there's contention when that conversation comes up, like, hey, why do you still have this guy? And well, because we're not a franchise where we are able to dictate that you must adhere to our branding standards and stuff like that. And like, you know, we try to be mindful of the people that helped get us here. I can't pretend that it happens 100% of the time, because it doesn't. And not that we're not mindful, but I mean that we end up still being partnered with them. And sometimes it's for reasons that are financial. Sometimes it's for reasons that are strategic. And, you know, and sometimes it's for more contentious reasons. Like, can I pretend that every single client that I serviced over 15 states myself personally when I was a TM loved me? Oh, hell, fuck. Josh Popenick tried to get me fired. You know, he's one of my best friends now, but that's a reality. You know, he hated me, as I'm sure many clients did when I was like, hey, by the way, you know how you're cake and eat it too, where you're having DAP and you're using other films with it? Well, it's ending now, tomorrow. I'm cutting it off. No, you know, and so, you know, unfortunately, there was some situations where you got into some heated arguments and one side or the other said, fuck you, and left, right? I mean, you know, Rob Stetler and I laugh about this all the time because our relationship began very bad. He, you know, he in his politically correct way, unlike me, said fuck off. And I used the actual words, probably. Then we left each other, and then we got back together with each other like maybe 4 months later. And now he's actually one of the largest accounts in the world, period. You know, Tim Ham, as a matter of fact, as you know, recently sold his business to him.
Congratulations to Tim. That's amazing.
Yeah, Tim is like, man, like, you know, there's another guy, right? Like, I mean, look at that kid. I mean, he's younger than me, so I get to say that. But, you know, when I met him, I don't even think it was $100,000 a year account.
Wow.
And when he left, he was nearing 7 digits. Amazing.
Incredible.
You know, so I don't know how I got to apologize off on tangents as I usually do. I start getting excited thinking about some of these things, but it's been a ride, you know, and the thing that I would say too, that everybody should be aware of is like you said earlier, Eric, or maybe I did, I apologize, because if it was me, I don't want to point that out, but companies are evolving. Companies are changing. You know, some of the stance that I had on some things 7 years ago, I would probably change my mind now, looking back. You know, there was people that challenged me many times through the years that I've been here, whether they were consumer or internal, saying, are you sure that you're on the right path? And I was very convinced. And now I would say maybe not as much. You know, I'll give you a really good example. I'll give you one in particular, one that really rings home. And, you know, this is really a result of Ryan Pape and Tony. Actually, I'm going to back up and say that this is more a direct result of Tony Rimas, my direct report, the person I directly report to. Sorry, Tony. It was the All In. You know, are you sure that the All In should be the only platform we use everywhere? And I was sure. I was sure for years. And then all it took was Ryan and Tony and I to have a really good heart-to-heart, closed-door conversation about, well, what about in a market where you have next to nothing, where XPEL has not done a good job at market penetration? And obviously there's few and far between, but there is definitely some. And up until Tint World, I'll use a really good example. By the way, Tint World El Paso, if you're on this podcast, I've heard nothing but insanely good things about you. I apologize that I haven't reached out yet. I really am looking forward to speaking to you both. I've heard amazing things. And Danny, I hope your popcorn is going down well. My buddy Danny at Tint World is also eating popcorn and enjoying every minute of this. So going back to what I was saying, look, El Paso. XPEL had really low penetration there. And, I was already utilizing the all-in exclusive, is what we're reterming it now, platform for the only way that you could get an XPEL account. And I had my reasons behind it. I still do. But in El Paso, where we were selling, I didn't even know, an outrageously low number per population per year. Jeff Phillips was doing a great job of following my direction. Maybe not aligned with it at first, but certainly implementing it, which is that we want you to be exclusive. And, Ryan was like, do you think that in El Paso, that's the best approach? And I'm like, now I would probably say no. And he's like, continue with that. And I said, well, by doing that in an area where nobody was asking for XPEL, because otherwise shops would have been calling us all the time, begging for it like we normally get, you had no market awareness. So there wasn't enough of a driving factor for a shop to make that decision. And instead, what we should have done in El Paso, Texas, is we should have said, look, if you're coming on board with paint protection film, you're going to be exclusive with paint protection film. If you happen to offer coatings, carry on with your own brand. But I'll tell you what I'm not going to allow you to do, and that is install another coating on top of our film, period. We are not changing that part of our warranty. So anybody on this podcast who's hoping that's changing, it is not. Do not get caught putting another coating on top of our film. We do not ask you to put coating on our film. You're not required to put coating on our film. That is tied selling. If you're doing it, it's illegal if that's what you're forcing on clients. Highly illegal.
You said tied selling. Maybe just quickly dig deeper into that. When you say forcing on clients,
I'll get to that in just a minute. I'll come back to that in two more seconds. So let's just finish this one thing off, right? So like come on board with PPF, fine. Your XPEL PPF. You want to still use Suntech window tint as an example? We get it, no problem, right? You want to continue using G-Technic coating, fine. When it comes to our film, either use our coating on our film or just don't sell coating on film at all. And not use you must switch everything over. Why? Well, because I don't have anything going on in El Paso. As a matter of fact, I had an El Paso account call me and laugh at me saying, see, you said to use this and it still hasn't worked. And he was right. And there's a huge but. The huge but is that in a market where we have next to no penetration, we should be proud of the fact that we have a differing opinion on our go-to-market strategy there and be open about it. And then say to that same customer, look, but the time's probably going to come where this is going to be a different conversation. I am going to be calling you and saying, the market is now getting flooded. And because I have too many people asking for an account that I want to service inside that market, before I bring on another account, I'd like to ask you if you want to make the conversion or do you want to leave? And again, let them know up front that conversation may happen and probably will happen at some point. And so, there's a really good example of where Tony especially challenged the entire sales management team to rethink things. And Ryan and Zach Locker and Alex Christ and Dean Mitchell and I sat in a war room for 2 fucking days and deliberated on all these different go-to-market strategies that maybe we need to revisit. And you know what? The coolest part was I actually got to see a lot of pivot from even Ryan Pape. Not that he doesn't pivot, he always does, but allowing us to talk, listen to us, and then go ahead and say, make a decisional change. And let's own it and let's be proud of it. So, I will let everybody know another secret. We will be going to market with some variation of our strategy. Before you try and great, that means I can go back and change things the way I was doing it. The answer is no. If you came on board underneath the current model, that's it. Not only that, but most of you are actually in penetrated markets. So we're definitely not changing into penetrated markets at all. The other thing is that there are areas where we probably overloaded too many customers and we didn't want to do that, right? We were able to do it during COVID. And now, of course, things are looking a little less attractive. So even that is another point where there's probably going to be some conversations coming from some clients right now. We're like, man, you know what? There's too many customers in this place. and you're not cutting it, and it's not based on your dollars. It's maybe based on something else. Maybe you are staying grandfathered with other brands. Maybe you are having terrible customer reviews. Maybe your installs suck, and we need to make changes. But tide selling, what you absolutely cannot do is say that in order to buy this product, you also have to buy this product to go with it. That's the tide selling. That is illegal. Get caught for it, it's very serious penalties and or jail time. So what we have always said is that XPEL paint protection film is not ceramic coating. Anybody on here that's selling ceramic coating as an equivalent to paint protection film, you're full of shit. You should be already shut down. But what's also true is that you don't need to put ceramic coating on top of our film at all. You want to put ceramic coating on our film? Does it have a benefit for your customer that you've explained the benefits that are legit and accurate, which is a glossier appearance and the hydrophobicity and the easier to clean? Yes, go ahead, sell it. But wow, that's cool that somebody did that.
I think you did that with your thumbs ups.
God damn, look at that. Let's see if I can do it. Wow, I've seen this now where it's also like the heart, right? Have you seen the heart one? That's so cool. Let's see, hold on. Now we're getting completely out. I love you, Eric.
I have no idea. Who have you been doing live streams with that you've been testing this out?
No, I think it's on Facebook or on Teams or something like that where it's happening. But and I don't use Facebook, so it can't be Facebook. It's something else. It's Teams, I guess. Anyways, so going back to that, like there was a lot of people who were like, "Hey, I'm just not a fan of your coating." More than likely, it's because we made that massive mistake that we talked about last time, which is where we didn't come into your shop and demonstrate how to use our coating in comparison to whatever brands you're currently using, recognizing that your shop in those conditions can make a big impact on flash time and leveling and all that other stuff. So shame on us. We did learn from that. We've changed that dramatically. As a matter of fact, our newest package, which is the launch package, if you will, for our coatings includes 2 days of inbound ceramic coating training, and if we have to do outbound, we can, but there's a small surcharge regardless. So what we did was we said, hey, look, like, okay, well, why are you selling coating on the film then? Well, because I want to. Okay. But that now negates my warranty, and I cannot be legally complicit in that. Hence the reason why you're not permitted to do it. Oh, I don't worry, Chris. I have my own warranty. No, because your warranty doesn't supersede the manufacturer's, whether you think it does or doesn't. It does not. As a matter of fact, my warranty is transferable, and if the car ends up in Mexico, I'm covering it. You're not. They won't even know that you did it. So no, you can't. And, that's an example of where, we were saying to people, like, we're not telling you that you have to buy our coating. We're telling you, you can't put another coating on our film. And look, I just want to be open about this too while we're on this. There's probably a lot of coatings that absolutely do not have an impact with our film. It's probably true. Now, it's certainly true the further north the car stays. But once you get into Florida and you get into the highest area in the country of UV index, and then you add the humidity, those combos have an absolutely insane impact on the way that chemicals will impact the top of the film. Every brand has seen pitting out of nowhere, yellowing out of nowhere, and stuff that they've never seen before. And if the film is coating infused, you see it less in the beginning, but you will still see it down the road. And so in order to make sure that we don't get sued for being unfair in a business practice, I won't use a brand name, but if I said brand Y, since of course there's an awesome product called System X, so I don't want to say System X, but if I said brand Y is approved to be on the coat on top of our film, because I've tested it, there is a very good reason for somebody to sue me for not testing theirs to be on it as well. And I've created an unfair business practice. Well, between the reputable brands, which of course there's lots of, Geon, G-Technic, Modesta, System X, 22 PLE, Ceramic Pro. I mean, you know, the list goes on and on. There's a lot of really good brands out there. I would have to test every single one of theirs, and I'd actually have to test every single one of the bullshit brands that is off of Alibaba. Chris Hardy is coating, you know, whatever. I mean, you know, and so I'm not willing to spend 80 grand a year to do that. And I don't care if they are, because they'd have to test every single version of it. I was talking about somebody with this yesterday, right? And I'm like, let's be honest about our installers, please. Please try and be honest. Your installer goes and looks on the shelf and goes, man, shit, I forgot to order some more of the PPF, some Pacific coating. It's okay. I'll take the paint one and I'll use it. It's fine. You know, I'll use the wheel and caliper one. It's fine. I'll use the glass one. And we don't know that stuff is okay or not. And so we would have to test it. And then we'd have to literally somehow legally obligate that company to notify us if they made even the most minute change within their coating, to then go and retest it. And we have to do it for every brand, period. And there's like 200 plus brands in the US if you guys don't realize that yet. So the answer is no, we're not going to. And that's why. And if you think it's because I want to own the coating world, you're an idiot. Coating is dying. If you haven't realized that your local car wash is now offering coating for an extra $5 a month, and that Walmart is advertising ceramic coating 24/7 as a DIY, and that they're getting bombasted by advertisements on TV on DIY products for $15 at ceramic coating, and wondering why the ceramic coating business, the professional, which is very true and accurate coating. I'm a huge fan of ceramic coating, guys, have been for years. But if you think I want to rest my laurels and die on the cross, if you will, to base all my business on ceramic coating, then shame on you for not thinking that I had more of a brain than that.
And with that, we are coming up on the 2-hour mark, so we just about have to wrap it up. The time flies. It's like, but we'll do it again soon, and I hope. And I think it was tremendously valuable. It's always fun catching up with you. And you know, I think we've laid out some of the environment, talked about Tint World, some of the economic environment, and
talked about ambulance chasers.
And ambulance chasers, which
Tint World, Sun Stoppers. I mean, you know. Like lots of awesome things. And look, lots of awesome things are happening within some of those other brands as well. You know, lots of awesome things are happening within 3M and Eastman right now. And proud of those guys. I'm super happy for them. And, you know, I know that the three of us will continue to just smash this space and do a great job with it. And like, again, like I'm excited for where this whole business is going. You know, it's growing up. It's becoming more professional. It's becoming a lot more of what it should have been years ago. And I'm happy to see that within all of us. So glad to be here for the ride.
And thank you for sharing your perspective. And, you know, I totally agree. It's we're in an industry that is very like, you know, infant in a way and is growing up just tremendously quickly, like you said. And that's a fun evolution to watch and also kind of document our thoughts along the way. It's been literally years now since our first Tint Wizdom together. So I enjoy being able to continuously check in and kind of see where we're at and watch this whole thing evolve and go.
Well, thank you so much, my brother. And look, let me see if we can get Mr. Pape on one with you as well. And you should reach out to Charles. And I know that, I don't know when the last time you did one with Bert, but I think that would be, you know, something really cool to line up as well. But of course, I know that there's lots of other brands that are worth listening to as well. And some of there's people within them, as you've had many other brands on here now, which is great. So thank you for the platform. You know how much of a big fan I am of this platform in particular, and I really appreciate the audience being with us. Whether you like what I have to say or not, I again, enjoy these moments.
Well, thank you so much. I sincerely appreciate all your support and you doing this as always, and tremendously fun. The time flew. We'll do it again soon.
Sounds great, buddy.
All right. Thank you, Chris, and thank you everybody for watching. Thanks,
everyone.